Hello YouTube, it's Carlos the Rook, and I'm bringing you round two that I played the March action with Chess Zone, and in round two I'm playing Farrat. I'm rated 1729 with the white pieces, and Farrat is 1845 with the black pieces. So we start off e4, e5, I go knight f3, and he go knight c6. So I go bishop b5, going into a Ruy Lopez, the Spanish opening, my favorite opening. And he responded with d6, which is Steinitz defense. So I go d4. He capture. I capture back. And he goes bishop d7. So the engine likes knight c3 here. Knight c3, knight f6, and bishop captures c6. But I'm playing a line that I got from Bobby. And in that line, I captured the bishop. Bishop captures the knight. So I capture, and most people capture back with the pawn. And here Fabi recommends castling, but because when I castle, most people come out with knight to f6. I rearrange the move order because I want to castle c4, then knight c3 is the line that Fabi gave in his Ruy Lopez opening course. So I go c4 first. And here Farrat plays g6. Now I castle. And he goes bishop g7 hitting the knight. Knight c3. And so this is the position I want as white. And now Farrat plays knight e7. And I think he went knight e7. His idea is to eventually castle and come with an f5. So I go bishop e3. And you see here the engine wanted me to go c5. But I wanted to go bishop e3 to protect the knight. And if my queen moves, this knight is good. And he castles. And the engine just wants c5 for some reason. And I go queen d2. I want to bring my bishop to h6 and get rid of the dark square bishop defending black's position. And here he plays c5. And I was deciding, do I go knight f3 or knight to e2? And I decided to go f3 because, e2, because with f3, it stops the f pawn. And what I want to do is move my pawn f4, f5 is what I want to get in. And here Farrat goes bishop e6, hitting the c4 pawn, which is unprotected. So b3 protects it. And now he goes a6. And a6 really confused me. I wasn't sure what the idea behind a6 was. I thought if he's going to move the a pawn, he should have at least been a5 with the idea of a4 and breaking up the pawn chain I got here. But a6, my knight, I don't want to pull my knight into b5 because then my rook is going to be hanging. So I went ahead bishop a6. And my idea is to trade off the bishops. And he goes f5. Now I wanted to go f5, so when he played f5, I was like, hey, that's my move. That's what I wanted to do. So I trade the bishops. He take back. And I'm not taking on f5. Because then his knight, which is probably his worst, now the queen probably is the worst piece. The knight's the second worst piece. And his rook is undeveloped. So he's behind in development. I got a lead on development. I want to bring my rook to d1. And I'm developed. But I'm not, if I take on f5, then he could develop with the knight or the bishop, and it improves his position. So instead, I play the best move in position, which is knight f4, and this gives me a 1.53 advantage. I'm hitting the bishop, which is unprotected, and he needs to move this bishop now. So he go queen d7. And here the engine wants rook on a to e1. with a 1.81 advantage for white. But I thought about putting the rook to d1, but not e1 right away. And what I was thinking was knight takes, queen takes, then rook to e1. And if you take here, I take there hitting the queen. Queen has to move. So that's the idea I had in mind. So I take here, he takes back, and now I'll bring the rook on A to E1. And the reason I moved this rook instead of the rook on F, because the rook on F is protecting the king. Because the F file is going to open. And so here the engine wants him to play rook on A to E8. But he plays queen F6. And I don't have as big an advantage as I did. So it's saying E captures F5 is the only move. And that made the most sense. I want E captures F5 because I want to put pressure down here on this knight. And here he surprised me when he captured with knight captures F5. Because now it allows knight D5. I'm hitting the queen and I'm threatening knight C7. So the queen has to move to F7. And now I'm threatening rook to E7. Winning the queen is a threat. But the knight on F5 stops that. So I was thinking G4 hitting the knight. If the knight moves, rook E7 wins the queen. However, G4, you got knight to H4. And if you go rook E7, it's knight to F3 and it's a royal fork. That forks the king, rook, and queen. So that doesn't work. Let me show you just what I was calculating. Hold on. Stockfish just went crazy. It's saying knight H4 don't work. Oh, because the queen C3. Well, let me show you what I was looking at first. Here. And then that's why it doesn't work. Knight F3. Check. You gotta move. You take the queen. You take this queen. Check. You take that. You take that. Huh. I guess you don't take that. You just go here. But black is up a rook. So that combination don't work. However, Stockfish just showed you go queen C3 here. King G8. Knight E7. Oh, wow. Wow. Knight E7 and the king has nowhere to go. You gotta give up the queen. And that just loses the queen. And you threaten to checkmate. So hold on, let's go back. Instead of knight H4, so do G4? No, G4 doesn't work because of knight D4. Oh, and then the check is coming from that way. It's knight D4, then the check on F3. So white would have to play F4 to stop the check on F3. And then it's rook on A to E8. stopping rook e7. So that doesn't work. I was sure it didn't work, but it was for the wrong. I was thinking knight h4 is the reason it didn't work. It's knight d4 is the reason it doesn't work. So here, I rejected g4 for the wrong reasons, but I rejected it. I just knew a knight would end up on f3, so I don't want to move the g-pawn. So I was looking at queen c3 check, seeing if I had any moves that way. I didn't see any tactics. So the engine's saying hands down rook e4 is the best line in this position. Rook e4, c6, knight e3, knight d4. And I really don't understand rook e4. I don't. Rook e4, and you're not even doubling up. Yes, I guess you're going to double up rooks. So hold on, it's rook e4, c6, knight e3, knight d4, rook on f to e1, rook a7 to block from that way, knight g4, h5, then rook captures d4. Why would you? Rook captures d4, c captures d4, queen captures d4, king h7, knight f6 check, queen captures f6. Oh, you got queen captures a7 check. Rook f7, queen e3. So this is the line Stockfish wanted. Wow. I mean, just wow. And it gives white a 0.90 advantage in this line. There's no way I was looking at rook e4. That never even popped in my head. The move I played was queen a5. And my idea is I'm hitting the c7 pawn. The queen is putting pressure on the a pawn. So that rook has to stay there and guard. And I thought rook a7 might be the best idea here. But so I just wanted to probe on the queen side and put some pressure since all his pieces is on the king side. Just put some pressure on the queen side where he only have a rook. And here, Farad made a mistake. He played c6. And c6 was a blunder. It allowed knight c7. And I almost missed this move. Instinctively, I wanted to go back and retreat to knight f4. And I was also looking at queen c3 checks, and if I had something there. But then the more I look into the position, I seen this. I'm hitting the rook, which needs to move. And if the rook moves, then I'm threatening knight e6 check, and that's a fork. And it's protected by this rook. It's all because this rook dominates this file. And also, the knight is stopping that rook from coming over here. Because that's the one thing I don't want is a rook on the e file to challenge me. So Farad plays knight d4. He's just trying to stop the knight e6 idea. So I take the rook. He takes my knight. I've won the exchange. And now what I want to do is get the queens off the board. So if I can get the queens off, this knight has a dominant post, and it might just be as strong as a rook because it protects this pawn. This rook protects that pawn. And the knight just like an octopus. It's just stopping me from doing anything. So here the ancient wants b4 to try and break up this pawn phalanx. But I went with the idea rook e3. And my idea is to possibly double up rooks on the e file, maybe even bringing the queen back to e1 and putting pressure on the queen that's in front of the king. And here Farad went h5. He's trying to give himself an escape square for the king to be able to go to. And I went rook on f to e1. And my threat is bringing the rook to e7 and winning the queen. And he goes king h6, getting out of the way. And here I was wondering, should I go queen d2 with the threat of rook e7? Or just go right away rook e7? The engine wants queen d2 first. But I went rook e7. And here he moved up queen f4. And that stops the queen d2 idea. And here I wasn't sure, do I go queen c3 or queen c7? Which one is best? In the end, I chose, the engine wants rook on 1 to e4. Rook on 1 to e4. I actually thought of that also. I considered moving the rook right here just to block the queen. But in the end, I went with queen to c7. Trying to threaten a mate, just flush the king out. And Farad went rook on f, rook to f8. He's threatening the mate. So I check. He come out. I check again with the queen. He blocks with the rook. And here I was looking to see if there's any tactics in the position. I actually considered h4. If the king takes, it's check this way. And the queen falls. He would have to do something like this. So that doesn't work. And I don't think I consider h4 here. I went queen e3 first. And then he played, because I wanted to trade the queens. I thought that was the best move in the position. And the engine agreed. And he played knight c2, forking the queen and the rook. And this is when I was considering h4 here, in this position. And the king takes, it's check. The queen can take, but it's check. No, not check that way. It would be check that way. And that would be mate. So the king can't take. And I was thinking the queen could take, and that rules out that line. But the queen can't take because the queen is pinned. So the king comes up. I think this is just mate here. So that's mate. So the king can't come up. And if the king step over here, then it's just queen d3 check. Queen e4 is the only move. And it looks like that's mate. So, hold on. Was h4 the best move in the position? Yes, h4 was the best move in this position. But in this, the computer is saying king captures h4 is the only move. And now it wants queen e2? Why queen e2 instead of g3? I don't get that. Why queen e2 instead of g3? Well, so I consider h4, and that was actually the best move in the position. But I played queen captures f4 just to trade queens. I figured to simplify. And he takes with the king. I thought he would take with the rook, but I guess he wants the rook to protect his pawns. So here I want to be real careful where I put my rook so it won't be forks coming. So I moved the rook over to d1. And he played d5. So I capture. And here he slid his rook behind, pinning my rook so I couldn't capture again. So I had a long think here. I almost went rook c7 right away, which is what the engine likes. But instead I went rook a7. And I'm threatening to capture the a pawn and promote my a pawn. So that forces c captures d5. And now I bring my rook to c7, hitting the c pawn, which is what I was after in the first place. So he goes knight b4, hitting my a2 pawn. And I capture on c5. He captures the a pawn. And now I take the d pawn with my rook, offering an exchange of rooks. And if he moves, then I'm going rook to d6 and hitting both pawns at the same time. So you take the rook, I take back, and now he goes knight c1, hitting at my b pawn. For a second, I thought just bringing the rook to the d file and taking one of these pawns, giving that pawn up and taking one of these pawns. But then I was like, let's say he take this pawn, I take that pawn, then it'd be 3-on-2 on the king side. That'd be kind of drawish. It'd be harder to get a win. So I wanted to preserve this pawn. So I went b4 to preserve it. He go knight e2 check, king f1, hitting the knight. And now the knight has to go to c3. I drop the rook to d6, hitting both pawns at the same time. He go king f5, protecting the pawn on the king side. And I take on a6. He bringing the knight to d5 to hit the b pawn. And I didn't want to play rook a4 because I felt like that was passive. I could have just played, I wasn't even thinking, I could have just played b5, b6, and he'd have had to give up the knight. That simple, b5, b6. But instead I played rook a5, pinning the knight to the king. He go king e6, moving the king. And I just sacked the rook. As Levy said, I sacrificed the rook. He takes back. And I move king to e2. And now my idea is to go after the pawns. He got to go kill this pawn. And then I can go get these. He go king c4. I move up king e3. He takes the pawn. And now I should have just went king f4 and went and took both of these pawns. But I was scared he's going to get back and get my pawns before I can get him moving. But it doesn't happen because I'll show you. King f4, king come here, king here, king here, take here, push. You can come over here, I'll take, he can take that, and this pawn queens. Simple. So that's what I should have did. But instead, was here. So instead, I went F4 in order to stop the pawn from moving. And he moved his king over here. He's trying to go after the pawns. So I go H3, and my idea is to go G4 and force him to either trade or push pass. And once he do that, then I'm going to push F5 and create a pass pawn. He move over, and now G4. He push past me, and I go F5. Move his king over, and I just take the pawn. You go king G3. I go G7. King captures. And I move my king to F4. You go king G2. Actually, king F3 would have been better, so he couldn't have went to king G2. And I queen. He go H3. And I go queen A2. King G1. I go king G3. And he goes H2. And I go queen F2 check. I had to checkmate on G2, but I wanted to checkmate with taking his last pawn. So he goes king H1 and queen H2 checkmate. So that's how the game ended. I got a very strong win against a dangerous and very strong opponent. I just got a slight advantage in the opening because he made an error, and I capitalized on the mistake, and I was able to bring home the W. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to your channel. Tell all your friends and family about it. Let's grow the channel. Thank you so much. Goodbye.